The wedding reception at the small community hall in Encino, California, was supposed to be a celebration. But everyone in that room knew the truth. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a goodbye. David Martinez, 24 years old, sat in a wheelchair at the head table, his tuxedo hanging loose on a frame that had lost 60 pounds in 6 months. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Stage 4. The doctors had given him weeks, maybe days. He had refused to die in a hospital bed. He had one wish: to marry the love of his life, Sarah, and have one perfect day before the end. The ceremony had been beautiful and heartbreaking. David had stood, supported by his younger brother, long enough to say his vows. In sickness and in health had never meant more. Sarah had cried through every word, knowing she was becoming a widow on her wedding day. Now, at the reception, it was time for the first dance. The moment every wedding has. The moment that represents the beginning of a life together. Except David and Sarah didn't have a life together ahead of them. They had tonight, maybe tomorrow. That was all. David couldn't stand anymore. The ceremony had taken everything he had. He sat in his wheelchair, oxygen tubes in his nose, Sarah beside him holding his hand, both of them trying to smile through tears as the DJ prepared to play their song. And then a 15-year-old boy stood up. David's best man. Not his brother. Not a cousin. But Tommy Chen, the kid from down the street who had been David's shadow since he was 8 years old, who had hero-worshipped David, who had learned to play basketball from David, who had cried in David's arms when his own father left, who loved David like a brother, like a father, like everything. Tommy walked to the center of the dance floor, tears already streaming down his face. In his shaking hands, he held a wireless microphone. "David can't dance tonight," Tommy said, his voice breaking. "But Sarah should still have her first dance. So I'm going to sing for them. And I'm going to dance with Sarah so David can watch and know that someone will always take care of her, even when he can't." The room fell silent. 150 wedding guests held their breath. Sarah started crying harder. David reached for her hand and squeezed it with what little strength he had left. Tommy nodded to the DJ, who started the music. Not the typical upbeat wedding song, but the song David had chosen. "She's Out of My Life" by Michael Jackson. The saddest, most beautiful song about love and loss and letting go. Tommy began to sing. His voice cracked immediately. He was 15 years old, crying, trying to sing one of Michael Jackson's most difficult songs while his hero, his best friend, his brother in everything but blood, sat dying 10 feet away. "She's out of my life, and I don't know whether to laugh or cry." Tommy held out his hand to Sarah. She stood, sobbing, and took it. This boy, this child, led her onto the dance floor and held her like David would have held her, swaying gently, singing through tears that wouldn't stop. And it cuts like a knife, "She's out of my life." What nobody in that room knew was that Michael Jackson was outside. Michael had been driving through Encino, heading home to Neverland Ranch after a meeting in Los Angeles. He had stopped at a red light directly in front of the community hall. Through the large windows, he could see the wedding reception. He could see the decorations, the guests, the celebration. And then he saw the boy, the teenager standing in the middle of the dance floor, crying, singing into a microphone. Michael couldn't hear the words through the glass, but he could see the emotion. He could see the pain. Michael's driver, James, noticed him staring. "Sir, the light is green. Pull over," Michael said quietly. "Sir, pull over. Right here. Now." The limousine pulled to the curb in front of the community hall. Michael stepped out, walked to the window, and watched. He saw the boy dancing with a woman in a wedding dress, both of them crying. He saw a young man in a tuxedo, sitting in a wheelchair with oxygen tubes, watching them with a smile that was breaking even as it formed. He saw 150 people in that room, crying, watching something devastating and beautiful unfold. And Michael recognized the song. Even through the glass, even without hearing the words clearly, he knew the rhythm, the melody. His song, "She's Out of My Life." Michael had written that song about heartbreak, about loss, about love that you can't keep. But watching the scene through the window, he understood that the boy singing wasn't performing the song. He was living it. He was saying goodbye to someone he loved while that person was still alive to hear it. Tommy's voice was breaking with every line. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. He held Sarah close, this woman who was like a sister to him, who was about to lose everything. He sang for David, who sat watching with tears running down his face, using the last of his strength to witness this gift, this sacrifice, this love. Michael Jackson didn't think. He didn't calculate. He didn't consider protocol or privacy or intrusion. He walked to the door of the community hall and opened it. The first person to see him was David's mother, Maria, standing near the entrance. Her mouth fell open. She dropped the tissue she was holding. "Oh my God," she whispered. Michael put his finger to his lips. "Chill, please. I just want to listen." He stepped inside quietly, standing at the back of the room. A few people near the door noticed him, their faces registering shock, but Michael gestured for silence, for stillness. "Don't interrupt. Let this moment continue." Tommy was reaching the final verse, his voice barely holding together. "And I can't believe what falling in love has done to me." Michael walked slowly through the room. People noticed him, gasped silently, grabbed each other's arms, but nobody made sound. They understood something sacred was happening. Tommy didn't see Michael approaching. His eyes were closed, tears streaming, his voice cracking on every high note, his 15-year-old heart breaking as he sang about loss while holding his best friend's wife, while his best friend watched from a wheelchair, knowing death was days away. "She's out of my life." Michael reached the dance floor. He was now less than 10 feet from Tommy and Sarah, standing just behind David's wheelchair. David's eyes opened wider. He saw Michael Jackson standing there, in his wedding reception, listening to a boy sing his song. David thought he was hallucinating. The morphine, the pain medication, this couldn't be real. Tommy reached the final line, the line where Michael Jackson himself had always cried during recordings. "She's out of my life." Tommy's voice broke completely. He couldn't finish. He stood there holding Sarah, sobbing, unable to continue, unable to complete the song. And then a voice joined in. A voice everyone on earth would recognize. Gentle, supportive, heartbroken. "She's out of my life." Tommy's eyes flew open. He turned and saw Michael Jackson standing there, singing the final line for him, finishing what Tommy couldn't finish alone. The room erupted, not in celebration, but in gasps, in cries, in the sound of 150 people simultaneously realizing they were witnessing something impossible. Michael walked onto the dance floor, put his hand on Tommy's shoulder, and sang the last haunting notes. "She's out of my life." When the song ended, silence filled the room. Complete, reverent silence. Michael looked at Tommy, this 15-year-old boy with tears streaming down his face. "What's your name?" "Tommy," he whispered. "Tommy Chen." "Tommy, that was the most beautiful performance of that song I've ever heard. And I wrote it. Do you know why?" Tommy shook his head, unable to speak. "Because you meant every word. You weren't performing. You were living it. That's what makes music real." Michael turned to Sarah. "You must be the bride. What's your name?" "Sarah," she managed to say. "Sarah Martinez." "May I have this dance, Sarah? I think your husband would like to see you dance one more time." Sarah nodded, crying. Michael Jackson took her in his arms and began to dance with her, slowly, gently, while the DJ restarted, "She's Out of My Life." But Michael didn't let Tommy leave. He gestured for the boy to stay. "Tommy, you started this. You finish it with me. Sing with me." So Tommy and Michael Jackson sang, "She's Out of My Life," together, harmonizing, their voices blending, while Michael danced with Sarah, and 150 people watched the most surreal, most beautiful moment any of them would ever witness. David sat in his wheelchair, oxygen tubes in his nose, his body failing, his life ending, watching Michael Jackson dance with his wife while singing with his best friend. He was smiling, actually smiling. Through the pain, through the fear, through the grief, he was smiling. When the song ended, Michael walked to David's wheelchair and knelt down beside it. "Hi, I'm Michael." David laughed, a weak, breathless sound. "I know who you are. What's your name?" "David. David Martinez." "David, I was driving by, and I saw your friend Tommy singing through that window. I saw love that strong, and I had to come in. I hope that's okay. Are you kidding? David whispered. You just made my last day on earth perfect. Those words hit Michael like a physical blow. Your last day? Maybe. Probably soon. I have leukemia. Stage 4. The doctors gave me maybe a week. I wanted to marry Sarah before I couldn't anymore. I wanted one perfect day. Michael's eyes filled with tears. How old are you? 24. 24, Michael repeated, his voice breaking. He looked at Tommy. And you're 15? Yes, sir. Michael stood up and addressed the entire room. I came here uninvited. I crashed your wedding. I'm so glad I did. Because you all just taught me something I'd forgotten. You taught me what love really means. It means being here. It means showing up. It means singing through tears for someone who needs you. It means dancing when you can't dance yourself, just so the person you love can watch and smile. He turned back to David. David, I want to do something for you. What song do you want to hear right now? Any song. I'll sing it for you and Sarah. David didn't hesitate. Man in the Mirror. That song got me through the first round of chemo. It made me believe I could change my situation. I couldn't, but it gave me hope when I had none. Then that's what we'll sing. Michael gestured to Tommy. You're singing with me again. And David, if you have any strength at all, I want you to try to sing too. Everyone in this room is going to sing. This is David and Sarah's wedding, and we're going to celebrate life while we still can. The DJ didn't have an instrumental track, so Michael sang a cappella. He started the first verse alone, his voice filling the small community hall with that distinctive power and emotion. I'm going to make a change for once in my life. Then Tommy joined in, his young voice harmonizing with Michael's. Then Sarah started singing. Then David, so weak his voice was barely audible, used his last reserves of strength to sing along. And then all 150 wedding guests joined in. The entire room sang Man in the Mirror together for David, for Sarah, for Tommy, for everyone who had ever fought a battle they couldn't win but fought anyway with courage and grace. When they reached the chorus, Michael walked back to David's wheelchair and knelt down again. He took David's hand and sang directly to him. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. David was crying. Sarah was holding his other hand, crying. Tommy was standing behind the wheelchair, his hands on David's shoulders, crying. And Michael Jackson was crying, singing this song of hope and change to a man who had no time left to change anything except the hearts of everyone watching. The song ended. The room was silent except for the sound of crying. Michael stayed kneeling beside David. David, I want to do something else for you. I want to make sure Sarah is taken care of. I want to help with your medical bills, with funeral expenses, with anything your family needs. And I want to set up a scholarship in your name for kids like Tommy who love hard and show up for the people they care about. David shook his head weakly. Mr. Jackson, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Because you're 24 years old and you chose to spend your last days getting married instead of being bitter. You chose love. That's heroic. That deserves to be honored. Michael stood and addressed Tommy. Tommy, you're 15 years old and you just showed more courage than most adults show in their entire lives. You stood up when you didn't have to. You sang when your voice was breaking. You danced when your heart was broken. You're going to grow up to be an extraordinary man. I can already see it. He pulled out his wallet and removed a card. This is my personal number. When you're older, when you're ready, call me. I'll make sure you get whatever opportunities you need. Education, music training, whatever you want. Because the world needs more people like you. Tommy took the card with trembling hands. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for coming. Thank you for singing. Thank you for making David's day perfect. Michael hugged Tommy, this 15-year-old boy who had tried to carry the weight of grief alone and ended up being helped by a stranger who became an angel. You didn't make his day perfect, Tommy. You made his life perfect. He got to see that when he's gone, the people he loves will take care of each other. That's the greatest gift you can give a dying man. Michael spent the next hour at the wedding reception. He danced with David's mother. He talked with Sarah about her love story with David. He took pictures with guests. He signed autographs. But mostly, he sat beside David's wheelchair and talked with him about life, about regrets, about love, about what matters when time runs out. Do you have any regrets? Michael asked. David thought for a moment. I regret that I won't see Sarah grow old. I regret that we won't have children. I regret that I won't be there when Tommy graduates, when he gets married, when he has his own kids. But I don't regret this. I don't regret today. Today was perfect. Because of Tommy, Michael said. Because of Tommy, David agreed. That kid saved me today. He gave me the gift of seeing that love doesn't end when I die. It keeps going. Sarah will be okay. Tommy will be okay. They'll take care of each other. Michael wiped tears from his eyes. You're very wise for 24. Dying makes you wise fast. When Michael finally had to leave, when his security team had waited as long as they could, he hugged David one last time. Thank you for letting me be part of your day. Thank you for teaching me what courage looks like. David smiled. Thank you for making my impossible wedding even more impossible. Nobody is going to believe this happened. Oh, they'll believe it, Michael said. I made sure everyone took pictures. Your wedding is going to be famous. As Michael walked to the door, he turned back one more time. David, one more thing. Yes, you won your battle. You didn't beat the cancer, but you beat everything that matters. You loved well. You were loved well. You chose joy when you could have chosen bitterness. You won. Remember that. David Martinez died 4 days later, on a Sunday morning, in his bed at home with Sarah beside him. Tommy was there too. David's last words were, "Tell Michael I said thanks. Tell him he was right. I won." Michael Jackson attended David's funeral. He sat in the back, trying to be unobtrusive, but his presence mattered to the family. He sang Man in the Mirror during the service, his voice breaking, crying openly for a young man he'd known for one evening, but who had changed him forever. After the funeral, Michael established the David Martinez Scholarship Fund for young people facing serious illness who wanted to pursue education or arts. The fund has helped over 3,000 young people since 1992. Michael also kept his promise to Tommy. He stayed in touch with the boy as he grew up, helped him get into UCLA, paid for his education, mentored him through decisions about career and life. Tommy Chen became a doctor, specializing in pediatric oncology. He treats children with the same cancer that killed David. He sits beside their beds and tells them about the night Michael Jackson sang at his best friend's wedding. He gives them hope through story, through presence, through showing up the way David taught him to show up. When Michael Jackson died in 2009, Tommy was one of the speakers at the memorial service. He stood before the world and told the story of September 19th, 1992, the night Michael Jackson crashed a wedding because he saw a boy singing through tears. Michael taught me that evening that love means showing up, Tommy said. He was driving by. He could have kept driving. He had no obligation to us, no reason to care. But he saw pain and he stopped. He saw love and he honored it. He saw a dying man and he made that man's last days beautiful. That's who Michael Jackson was. Not the moonwalk, not the music videos, but the man who stopped his car because a 15-year-old kid was crying while singing his song. Tommy pulled out the card Michael had given him 17 years earlier. Michael gave me his personal number that night. I still have it. I called it sometimes over the years just to thank him, to tell him I was okay, to let him know that David's legacy was living on through the work I was doing. He always answered. He always remembered. He always cared. David was right about one thing, Tommy continued. He said his wedding would be impossible to believe. And it is. But it happened. Michael Jackson danced with Sarah. He sang with me. He knelt beside David's wheelchair and promised him that love doesn't end when we die. And then he spent the rest of his life proving that promise was true. Today, there's a photo hanging in Tommy's office at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. It shows Michael Jackson kneeling beside a wheelchair, holding a young man's hand, both of them smiling despite the tears. Below the photo is a plaque. Love means showing up. David Martinez, 1968 to 1992. The story of David's wedding teaches us something profound about presence, about the moments when we could keep driving but choose to stop, when we could stay outside but choose to come in, when we could ignore pain but choose to acknowledge it. Michael Jackson was driving by. He had no connection to these people. He had no obligation to care. But he saw a boy singing through tears, and he stopped. He walked into a stranger's wedding and made it sacred. He danced with a dying man's wife and sang with a heartbroken teenager and turned grief into grace. Because that's what love does. Love shows up. Love stops the car. Love walks through the door. Love sings when voices break. Love stays when it could leave. David got his perfect day. Sarah got her dance. Tommy got his mentor. And Michael Jackson got reminded why he mattered, why his music mattered, why showing up mattered. If this story broke your heart and rebuilt it, subscribe and share it. Because we all have chances every day to stop the car, to walk through the door, to show up for pain we could ignore. And every time we make that choice, we create miracles. We turn weddings into memories. We turn grief into grace. We turn last days into perfect days. Hit that notification bell for more stories that remind us what really matters when everything else falls away. Como olvido. Have you ever shown up for someone when you didn't have to? Or has someone shown up for you? Share your story. Your presence might have been someone else's miracle. And remember, when you see tears through a window, when you see someone singing while breaking, when you see love fighting death and choosing joy anyway, stop the car. Walk through the door. Show up. Because that's when you stop being just another person driving by. That's when you become someone's angel. That's when impossible becomes real.